So good afternoon to everybody, and very warm welcome on behalf of our team, on behalf of Francesco Pignatelli, ELISE Action Leader and the Senior Program Manager at Joint Research Center, European Commission, my colleague Lorena Hernandez, Project Officer at the Joint Research Center, and myself, Simon Vrečar, Consultant at Joint Research Center, who will be with you today and will be hosting this webinar with the title Location-Enabled Public Services. So maybe before we start, to share with you a few details about ELISE. So ELISE stands for European Location Interoperability Solutions for Government and is a part of the bigger ISA² program and the European Interoperability Program aiming at providing cross-border and cross-sector interoperability to public administrations and the business and citizens. Under this program, there are 54 different actions dealing and tackling interoperability from different angles, and ELISE is the only one amongst them focusing on the location dimension as a driver for enabling the digital government information. As you can see on the next slide, with the context of ELISE knowledge transfer activities, also the webinar today is under this activity. We are organizing periodically these webinars, whose aim is actually to engage in an agile way with different topics which are relevant to the digital transformation. And also to showcase and promote the results of ELISE activity. So before we go to the content of the slide, I would just like to take the opportunity of the ELISE knowledge transfer activity that is also going on, as you can see on the next slide. So we are performing a survey with the title Evolution of the Access of Spatial Data for Environmental Purposes. So through which we would like to collect the evidence on how to access and use of the spatial data has evolved over the last decade, because this is the long study, comparable study with the one that was performed 10 years ago, and understand the challenges and impacts and benefits, and also the results can be used then for the Inspire directive. So everybody is invited here. There are so any person or organization that are making use of data general. So we are planning to close the survey not the end of November, but at the beginning of December. And you have also the links of the survey. So it really help us here promoting this survey, because your say and your feedback here are very important for us. Okay, coming back to the webinar today, so our speakers today will guide us through the topic of a set of the location-enabled public services, showing us how the public sector can leverage upon the increasing opportunities presented by location-enabled services. So Sebastiaan van der Peijl and Lea Ytrehus, both from Deloitte, will present us the current state of play on the location-enabled public services and provide information on some best practices of state-of-the-art solution. So what they will try to cover today in the next 6 minutes. First, the context of and the definition of the location enablement, followed by the opportunities and challenges that are in location-enabled public services. There will be some time as well to a bit detail present some cases and demonstrate the actually location-enabled public services. And at the end, some conclusions and takeaway messages. So in the last part, there will be, of course, some space for your questions, for your comments, and of course for sharing as well your experiences regarding the location-enabled. Before we start, I would like to invite you to a short poll that we would understand where are you coming from. So what is your affiliation? So what kind of organization you're coming from? And what is your role? So are you location data services provider, user, both of them, or none of them? So please take maybe 10-15 seconds to vote. Okay, only 1/5 of the answers, please. Okay, we have about the half of the answers. So compare the results. So it's obviously that most of you are coming from the national public administrations or private SMEs, and most likely you're in the role of the providers. On the other hand, also the users are also represented. So please, at this point, I will give a floor to Lea.
Thank you very much, Simon. So indeed, we will now jump into the content of this webinar. So actually, I will give the floor to my colleague Sebastiaan to provide some context and definitions of what we're talking about today.
Thank you, Lea, and thank you, Simon, and welcome everyone. So yeah, I will give a kickstart to the presentation. First, focusing on location enablement, the context and definitions. So what we'll first look at is the definition. So what are we talking about in terms of location enablement? So we're talking about location data that can be used in for many different services in the public and private sector for mapping, visualization, data analytics, key insights that can be obtained from combining it with other sources. For example, also air quality data, urban planning, mobility, presence of businesses, industry in a geographical area, etc., to gain interesting insights, etc. And for a definition, I refer to the definition of this year by JRC. The concept of location enablement or spatial enablement refers to the use of location information to facilitate the realization of societal, governmental, and organizational objectives. And so location enablement is about getting access to and integrating that location data and information to improve processes. So that's a definition for you. And now the question is, okay, so what does that mean in the scope of e-government services? If we go to the next slide, what we have seen in, let's say, the past decade is a growing momentum for location-enabled public services. The figure you see on the slide is a figure from the e-government benchmark that has been carried out for the last 10 years or so, and where we see that public services are becoming more and more digital by default across the EU, also in a cross-border context. It's clear that from these measurements that are conducted every year, that there's a steady increase in terms of the digital public services across all member states. And so this digitization also represents a drive to make public services more efficient, more effective, timely, and of high quality, meeting the needs of citizens, businesses, as well as public administrations, which in itself creates a virtuous cycle, right? So more and better digital public services that become available, the more users demand these, as they are more available and more easy to use. And what the expectation of an average user is also that they are on par with private digital services that they are used to in their everyday life. So for example, another fact from the benchmarks is that more than 3 in 4 public services are now actually also mobile friendly, which is definitely something that citizens and businesses would expect. And most public services actually have a spatial component. So think about addresses, place names, administrative units, geographic or map coordinates, etc. And using existing sources of location information makes it possible to integrate with that data and to create new services and better insights for policy and implementation. So integration of spatial information in the process of public administrations and their interaction with citizens and businesses is essential for actually creating these new public services in a user-friendly manner that we see popping up all over Europe. From a policy angle, this is of course something that has been driven for many years by the Commission and by member states alike. So as part of the EU strategy for the digital single market, the Commission recently adopted the European Digital Strategy and Data Strategy to encourage the development of cross-border digital public services and the use of data-driven applications is one example. And to ensure the wide use of digital technologies, there's also the Digital Euro program that intends to support the deployment and access to the state-of-the-art in terms of supporting digital transformation. And of course, this is nothing new in the sense that the Inspire and open data directives have been supporting that over the last decade as well, and have made available a number of key elements to implement these interconnections. So we've seen that also in a consistent policy focus in the last decade, from the digital agenda to government action plans, etc., and more recently the single digital gateway as well, implementing a variety of digital public services that now need to be made available online, as well as enabling a once-only principle. And in the context of Inspire and also the PSI open data directives, there's also a recent development where high-value data sets will be made available as soon as the Commission adopts an implementing act on this, which also includes geospatial data. And of course, the ELISE program has been working in enabling interoperability for public sector also for many years, and including 54 actions that advance interoperability as such. And that's a key element in creating advanced and user-friendly e-government services that are interlinked and based on existing information sources, and also enabling the once-only principle, for example. So there's the European Interoperability Framework and the Observatory of the implementation in the member states, called NIFO. And that also is reflected in the ELISE action under the ELISE program as well, of course, where we have the EU location framework as well as an observatory of that called the LEAF. And well, the quote that you see here on the Digital Euro program is important because, of course, that's a program that will be starting next year. And among other things, will aim at including the use of geospatial data as a horizontal layer for use in different sectors. So that's a bit where we're heading, and where the next policy focus will be. Then more from a technical point of view. Essentially, what we're talking about here is using the building blocks that are available, right? So spatial data infrastructures, or perhaps what will be called data spaces in the lingo of the European Data Strategy. And the Inspire, they provide a supporting framework for e-government and a platform for distributing location data based on the infrastructures established at national level in the member states, and data sharing actions and policies of government agencies that create and maintain that location. So components are provided that can be used as building blocks for the development of location-enabled e-government services. For example, there are spatial data sets over 34 themes. There are web map services to visualize data, and web feature services to download them, and metadata on data and web services to find and understand the services to process data, etc. And there are other assets as well. For example, making use of location-aware technologies, GPS, Wi-Fi, and cell towers that can make personalization of services and better services possible. Again, referring to mobile friendliness. And using gazetteer data is also a key resource here, as well as APIs that are becoming more and more available to provide access to these kinds of services that are becoming fundamental building blocks for many types of public services. So all this contributes to more user-friendly services based on user-centered design by guiding users to the right let's say, name or address, or simplified content on maps and easier navigation, etc. So here the gazetteer is an important element, as which can be defined as a register of features of a country, region, continent, etc., containing information on their geographical position. And so the ELISE action of the ISO program carried out a survey on this, and also a pilot, the JRC gazetteer, that confirmed that there is a demand for an EU gazetteer to support multinational applications or complement existing national ones, particularly for purposes such as emergency response, searching for data sets, news items, tourism, cultural heritage site, validating foreign addresses, you name it. Many different applications are possible. And the JRC Gazetteer evaluation that was published in September 2020 showed that both data official as well as volunteered sources are complementary, and mutually enhanced results can be obtained from combining these data sets. There's, for example, a best practice from Australia showing that a national address validation system provided benefits such as improved service delivery with the ease of data entry, and reduced keystrokes, a seamless data entry experience across agencies, and access to a verified national address repository. So being able to locate can also improve efficiency for example, emergency services or the installation of utilities, reduce fraudulent activity, and enable revenue to be collected, just to name a few examples. So that sets a little bit the scene of what it is we're talking about in a policy and also in a technical context. And I now give word to Lea to talk about the opportunities and challenges for the public sector.
All right, thank you very much, Sebastiaan. So indeed, now that you have a bit of an insight to the context, I think we can jump into opportunities and challenges for the public sector. So first of all, I would say we see that there are new drivers that are constantly evolving for the adoption of location enablement by public sector bodies. So if you look at this figure here on the left-hand side, it kind of depicts where we're at. So we have, huge developments in software, so web-based access, also mobile first, of course. There's the element of people. We have increased map literacy, but we also have increased engagement as well in terms of voluntarily giving up your data, let's say. And that also links to data and the masses and velocity that we have, the volume of data that's being generated today, also through volunteer geographic information. Lastly, hardware. So we're talking massive computing power these days, and new infrastructures and cloud computing, and all of this is built or kind of assembled by new procedures that we're developing today, which leads to what we could call a culture that embraces the use of geospatial insight in making decisions. So maybe before we jump into the key opportunities, just to give you really a key, let's say, typology for which types of services we're often talking about, where we see maybe more opportunities in terms of location enablement. Bear in mind, it's not exhaustive, this list. But we have, for example, information services, right? So location data can really help administrations to make the information on their activities, processes, and products available to citizens and businesses in a really user-friendly and easily accessible manner. Secondly, there's also contact services, so administrations can use location information really as an effective instrument for allowing citizens and services to contact them. And we really see this as kind of a trend that administrations are to an increasing extent using applications based on location information to their citizens to allow them to report on different types of problems in the public domain. We'll jump into one of these cases later. There's also transaction services, which could also be supported by the use of location data. So just to be a bit concrete here, an example could be online applications for building and environmental permits, or applications for requesting agriculture subsidies, and the list goes on. We also have participation services, so there are instances where we see that location data can enable the participation of citizens in formulation and evaluation as well of policies. Lastly, also data transfer services. So public administrations could use location data to support the exchange and sharing of data with other public administrations. So now perhaps to the key opportunities. So the ones that we want to highlight today is maybe first of all, the potential to improve service quality and performance. So what we would say here is that location insights, when analyzed over time and as well in meaningful numbers, can really be used to make future predictions. It can strengthen the quality of public services, productivity, resource allocation, and the development as well of preventative policy. So the key here is really that we would argue that, you know, situational awareness, increased situational awareness, will probably lead to better resource allocation, right? So an example of this is how new technologies and techniques, such as we could say modeling of digital twins, can really allow public administrations to simulate and monitor projects and sites in real time. And this will also improve then overall processes and outcomes. The second key opportunity that we would highlight is that really almost all public services can generate cost savings from smarter use of location data to derive insights that inform policy, services, and processes. So geospatial visualization, for example, which is essentially presenting complex data, complex location data in an easily digestible way, is one of the simplest steps that you can take into account the fact that there's multiple interacting and independent factors towards decisions that affect citizens, but is also a way to better measure and target the supply and demand of services in a certain area. For example, here, government organs can integrate third-party location or geotag data to make their services more cost-effective. And as we'll see later, there are certainly economic benefits of new models making use of location enablement. So the third aspect is collaboration. So we would say that by using location-enabled techniques and processes and enabling these services to be developed really allows also public authorities to pool resources and develop innovative approaches. We have actors, which probably most of you know, within the open data movement, for example, who really advocate for bringing together public sector organizations along with nonprofit and private sector actors, and thereby also fostering ecosystems thinking. So for example, we could say that anonymized location data from smartphones and social networks can allow us to understand patterns of movement in local areas. This can feed into traffic management, public transport, disaster response, or urban planning. The list goes on. And lastly, we've also highlighted engage the public. And this is important because there are changes in demographics and rapid technological evolution, which requires really a shift in what public services are delivered, first of all, and how they're delivered as well. So social media and volunteer geographic information plays a key role here, as well in informing the planning, delivery, and measurement of public services. So an example here is how, for example, citizens can provide real-time input to flood warning systems. They can report on environmental issues or other aspects that concern them. So it can really be a tool to engage the public as well. And on that note, now that we've explored the various opportunities, let's say for public enabled, location enabled public services. Let's have a look at what are the key challenges to overcome here. So first of all, open data maturity, right? So the Open Data Maturity Report of 2019 showed that the average open data maturity score of the EU 28 was 66%. So that increased just 1 percentage point from 2018 when measuring policy, portal impact, and quality. And this is, of course, an area of improvement. If you look at the image here on the right-hand side, upper left corner, you can see that there's also some disparity between member states in this field. So in terms of location-enabled e-government, the initial step is really to make location data accessible, right? So through different distribution channels. Now, this is something that can already be achieved by the establishment of an SDI. However, in order to really use spatial data to interact, standardization and interoperability becomes crucial. So we've listed this as well as a key challenge, right? But it's of course also a really necessary tool to capitalize on current opportunities, allowing systems to speak to one another in very, very simple terms. So the other figure that you can see on the right lower hand corner, it's a figure from the Location Interoperability Framework Observatory's 2020 report. And now these indexes that you see represent the maturity level of location interoperability implementation in the respective focus areas. And they're measured against the target state expressed in the EULF blueprint. So overall, what this figure essentially shows is that there's room for improvement, right? Especially when it comes to governance, partnerships, and capabilities. But also in standardization and reuse and digital government integration. Next on our list, and this is a well-known one, of course, is the need to ensure trust, privacy, and data protection. So this is really key in the success of Europe's digital transformation. This is both in the creation of a single market for data, and it also serves as a key pillar in the Commission's white paper on AI. Regarding public services specifically, the e-government benchmarking report that we've spoken a bit about today highlights that actually citizens might only be willing to access online services and share their personal data online when they generally trust their government. And therefore, you know, that's also how they know that they can trust the security of the online service and overcome this absence of face-to-face communication that we might have been used to in the past. So fostering trust, really, in all senses of the word, is therefore key in this regard. Our last point of the key challenges to overcome is strengthening technical capacities. This is important, right? And this can be done through knowledge sharing and the use of available criteria, indicators, and benchmarks for location-enabled public services to really come to a point where we're able to provide these user-centric designs and also, very importantly, adopt collaborative approaches. So the LEFA report that I previously mentioned actually states that investments in communication and skills currently do not support enough awareness and capacity building to drive the types of improvements that we want to see. So on that note, I think Simon has a poll for us.
Yes, indeed. So thank you, Lea, for presenting these two slides, in particular the opportunities and the challenges that need to be overcome with location-enabled public services. So maybe if you could share with us your opinion about let's say, the relevance, the opportunities and challenges that we've explained today. So if you could maybe vote on both of them. So which of the opportunities you see the most relevant have been mentioned, and of course, which of the challenges you see the most relevant. Please select up to 2 choices for each of the questions. Just vote. Answers. Okay, at this point we will end the polling and share the results. So when speaking of the opportunities, for you are the most important improving service quality and effectiveness, then enable collaboration with other organizations, next one, engage the public. The other side of the challenges, the main challenges are still standard and interoperability, what ELISE is about. Then the open data maturity, enhancing trust, and then strengthening the technical capacity. Maybe we can have some discussion of it later on in the question and answer. Now I will ask you, Sebastiaan.
All right, thank you very much, Simon. So actually that takes us to the third section of this webinar today, which is on location-enabled public services demonstrated. So we want to give you some case studies here to show you, okay, now we know the basics, we know the opportunities and the challenges. How can this be employed in 2 very specific cases? So it's again non-exhaustive. But just to give you, first of all, a quick taste of some examples of potential application areas, again, non-exhaustive list. First of all, transport. Obviously, there's very clear links to location data in the field of transport. But let's say in light of the increased congestion of urban centers, location-enabled public services can provide key assets and insights to public transport and infrastructure. So just to give you some quick examples, in route planning and optimization, adopting smart maps and spatial analysis of key infrastructures such as airport, rails, and roads. Here, location-enabled public services can really play a key role. Secondly, in construction and planning, for example, GIS, so geographic information systems, can really be an essential asset in planning operations and conducting maintenance. We see that state-of-the-art solutions really employing location intelligence, such as in certain GIS systems for managing infrastructure, can really boost public works and generate significant savings. So perhaps some examples of this can be how location-enabled public services can issue building permits through interactive platforms or chatbots. There's also the possibility to plan, monitor in real time, and perform predictive maintenance through new technologies such as digital twins. When we talk about social services here, there's also a wide array of examples. But to give you one, there's really an opportunity to better target and distribute social services through spatial analysis. So one example from the UK is how, so the government mapped social housing, coupled this with the number of people in each unit based on tax papers, and measured this with floor space. And by seeing these spatial relationships, it really allowed them to optimize social housing by better allocating housing units based on the size of the families. So that's quite a basic example, but shows you what benefits can be added there. In the field of the environment, we see that public sector services that employ location intelligence for smart waste management, We also have location intelligence solutions for energy efficiency, to mention one. You can generate energy savings for public buildings, for example, which can significantly lower overall carbon footprint, which is very important. So now that we've just given you some brief, very quick examples, let's dive deeper into two of them. So here, our first example is on locally volunteer data for better services. So here we want to highlight the case of FixMyStreet. So we chose this case study because it's really a prime example, right, of how location data can engage the public, facilitate collaboration, and increase efficiency through the use of volunteered location data. So perhaps first, just to give you a bit of background, so this is an open source software provided by mySociety. So mySociety is a not-for-profit social enterprise, and they're working with partners internationally. Now their aim is really to build digital technologies that help people be active citizens across the three areas of democracy, transparency, and community. So some really nice underlying values here. So how does this really work? So it's easy, really easy for anyone to report a problem. I can say so because I've tested it, without having to direct it to the appropriate authority. So this platform, FixMyStreet, they use the problem's location and category and sends a report by email or web service to the department or body responsible for fixing it. And these reports, if I go on to FixMyStreet, they're visible to everyone. So this allows the public to see what has already been reported. They may leave updates or subscribe to alerts on problems that concern them. And this again decreases the administrative burden on both sides, as it really helps prevent the duplication of reports. So, but then also from the developer side, all that's needed is a team. So it doesn't have to be even a public authority that implements this, although I think in most cases it is. So you need a team. You need to download the software that's freely available. You need to obtain boundary data, of course, to be able to define who's responsible for fixing problems where. And you will need the email addresses of the relevant authorities, and then you may customize your site and go live. Now they also have a pro version, so FixMyStreet Pro. And some of the benefits that they highlight about the Pro solution is that you can achieve direct integration into the local authorities' backend system. So this makes it a lot more efficient, obviously. It further prevents duplication because it promotes, it prompts actually citizens to subscribe to existing problems. And another point that we thought was quite interesting as well is that FixMyStreet Pro provides also problem hotspots or heat maps. So local authorities can see what issues are trending where, which can be useful for policy making, of course. From the user perspective, the platform and application asks you only to provide an address or upload a photo whose geotag will be used. Provide a brief description, name, email address, and there's no verification procedures necessary. So as I mentioned, also any user can really access the history of incidents, the dates of the reports, the acceptance from relevant authorities, and the closing of requests. So you can follow any incident that you're interested in. So what we would say are really the key successes of this platform is, first of all, it really adopts this collaborative approach, right? And a very user-centric design for those who've visited the websites of certain cities or communes. Excuse me. And this is really demonstrated by the quite big uptake that you can see of this platform. If you look at the image to the right, you see this is Brussels. It's really a platform that's being used, demonstrated by the number of incidents reported. It's also a type of solution that engages the public, right? It also has the potential to really increase efficiency and deliver cost savings, especially perhaps the pro version, but also because it really diminishes the bureaucratic burden on both ends. And lastly, it really provides a service where location data is already crucial. It's readily available, and it really brings added value to the public and the service provider in one go. So that is it for the first case study. Now I know that we had David Eaton from FixMyStreet in this call. But
we had. Unfortunately, he needed to leave for another meeting. So.
Right. Okay. Thank you, Simon. But then we can actually go to the next case study, I think. So the next case study that we'd like to highlight is Transport for London, which is really a case study that's about open data for better public services in practice. So this is really an example of where we see that publishing open data creates this sort of virtuous circle that Sebastiaan was mentioning that benefits those using and delivering transports in large metropolis. So we chose this because we can see that there's a significant economic and social benefits of these types of public-private collaborations and sharing of location data. So first, just some brief background. Back in 2007, Transport for London decided to make available their data in an open data format. So this means that the data could be freely used, reused, and redistributed by anyone that could support operational service improvements, also who could support the development of new customer-facing products and services, those who could increase transparency and innovation, and lastly, challenge existing ways of working. So how was this done? So TfL made available data about its networks through APIs, static data files and feeds. And then businesses, so we're talking Waze, Google, Apple, Mapway, and many others, as well as a large number of academics and professional developers partnered with TfL and used this data to create new commercial and non-commercial customer-facing products and services. So a benefit of this was that the TfL network passengers and other road users could then take advantage of these new services and products to really enjoy a better travel experience. So the insights from the data by these external users were then looped back into Traffic for London and enabled them to stimulate new ways of thinking, let's say, and in turn then increase the demand for the network and improve overall customer satisfaction. Excuse me. So you see the figure here on the right that really shows this loop that we're talking about. Now, in factual terms, to give you some numbers on this, we see that first of all, this has generated annual economic benefits and savings up to £130 million for travellers, businesses, and TfL itself by providing open data. So this is an estimate from Deloitte in 2017. And at this time, 80 TfL data feeds covering operational and corporate information across all modes of transport were made available. And around 75% of this data is available via APIs. Also, interestingly, 42% of Londoners use an app powered by TfL data. In 2017, they mapped that this was, we were talking about 600 apps, so it's quite significant. And TfL also has significant data partnerships, right, with major app developers and digital partners, where they made available their data and received back data. And it's actually quite an impressive number. They had over 12,000 registered developers. So unfortunately, we don't have the 2020 numbers, but I doubt it's decreased. And also, just on the note of also engaging the public, right? There's been a number of hackathons that have been held to engage with the community and receive feedback. So this is really nice. Now, just to quickly go through the key successes that we see from this approach. First of all, we see a public-private partnership that really benefits all ends, right? So TfL receives significant data on areas where they do not themselves collect data, or where they didn't collect data. And this has allowed them to undertake new analysis and improve operations. By opening data, TfL is also creating indirect jobs. So a number from 2017 again was that they were indirectly supporting 500 jobs that would not have existed otherwise. And companies, of course, have a significant gross value added from this data, estimated at about 12 and 15 million pounds. So it's needless to say very significant. Second point, as well as increased efficiency. So for the public, we're saving time for road users and passengers. There's better information to plan journeys, and I would say also the ease of traveling is improved. For TfL, importantly, it reduces their pressure on contact centers, while actually at the same time expanding their customer reach. So this is important. Lastly, regarding cost savings, so the cost of TfL for publishing open data is estimated at around a million, excuse me, pounds annually, and this suggests really quite a significant return on investment. And it also creates potential cost savings to not have to build apps yourself, actually, or through co-developing with third-party developers. Citizens also save costs, of course. These are costs that were previously spent on paid subscriptions of SMS alerts, and allows them to use free apps with really real-time updated information instead. So those were really the key messages. So on that note, I think already a bit over time, so I will leave the floor back to Sebastiaan for the key takeaway messages and conclusions.
Thank you, Lea, for these very interesting examples. And I think that in terms of takeaway messages and conclusions, those are very telling, of course. But what we've seen in the presentation overall is that, first of all, there's a growing momentum for the uptake of location-enabled public services, and we've seen a bit what you can do with it. There is more available, and the potential to improve existing services and products and to boost the creation of new ones is clearly there. And second, to meet the needs of tomorrow, collaborative approaches to design and user centricity is key. That's echoed also in the government benchmarks, etc., as a key design principle. And to achieve that, the right prioritization and performance indicators must be applied. And third, if we capitalize on the high availability of data, as well as software, hardware, and volunteered information and processes that are, and there are significant collaborative opportunities, cost efficiencies, as well as service quality improvements to be made. However, to get there are things to improve, particularly the interoperability between services and across borders, and improving the data maturity, focusing on trust and privacy and protection in policy, and strengthening the technical capacities to minimize the gaps at the local, regional, national levels, as well as in the cross-border context. So these would be the key messages that we take away, and we also thank you for supporting, providing your insights to the polls in this respect. And I think that brings us to the questions and answers.
Yes, indeed. Thank you very much, both. So since we don't have so much time left, I propose that we go quite quickly to the question and answer part. So maybe just to give you a challenge a bit, so maybe you have some other, let's say, services that you would like to share with us, some experiences. Maybe you would like to discuss also the list of opportunities and the challenges we were mentioning before, particularly on those ones that you voted. Just to remind you about the opportunities, you thought your result was that improve service quality and effectiveness. One of the most important. On the other side, one of the key challenges you've seen is the standards and interoperability. So maybe there are some questions about the cases that Lea presented. So please, the floor is yours. Or while you are thinking, maybe I can post some about the FixMyStreet. The representative of this use case is not here anymore. Our colleagues from Deloitte will be able to answer. It was quite obvious that this from the results on the map in the Brussels. So it's this service is quite well visited by the users. So do you have any information? So how the city administration is capitalizing on that? So how is there any connections with the back-end systems and so on? So are there any information maybe on that there?
Sorry, Simon, I didn't hear you quite well. Could you repeat the question?
Yes, of course. So is there, it was obvious on the slides that you showed that the FixMyStreet system is quite well perceived by the users, at least that are a lot of inputs from citizens entries. On the other side, it would be also interesting to know how city administrations is actually using the benefits of this system, so how they are connecting with or integrating this system into their processes, into their backend. Are there any information in that?
Right. So really, what we wanted to highlight, and what I can maybe explain a bit further, is that the newer versions of FixMyStreet enables you to integrate their platform into the backend system. So it takes away this whole element of emailing, and it allows the councils to better sort and target who should fix problems where they exist, and use the dashboards live to solve solutions, rather than having to resort to other channels and sort of double admin burden. So from what I understand, how they do this is that they overlay asset data, such as street lights, on the map to help citizens better identify or place the issues. And this integration really with the back office system creates efficiencies, improved efficiencies for officers, and they can really generate some significant savings through this channel shift. So actually there's more and more demand for this type of service from FixMyStreet. And it's already been implemented. If you look at their website, there's already quite a few case studies for the Pro version, so where it's integrated into the backend systems, mainly in the UK. But we have faith that it might be spreading, seeing how popular it is also in the city of Brussels, for example.
This system running only in the city of Brussels, or it's maybe also on the regional level or on the national level? Information about that?
I think in Belgium it's implemented in multiple cities, but they run it city by city, and in the UK council by council.
Mhm.
But from what I understand as well, the Pro version allows you to target also issues of wider infrastructure, such as highways that go between cities. So there's certainly opportunities to expand the geographical reach and boundaries. Yeah.
Much for that. Any questions from the audience, please? Anybody?
I actually read an interesting blog recently about the setup of the FixMyStreet Pro in Lincolnshire and the UK, where the developers also said, well, we did this completely remote in COVID times, given that normally when you would do such an implementation, you would go and visit the different administrations to see how you can integrate with their systems, etc. But they did it fully remotely, based on the cloud-based service that is provided by FixMyStreet, which is an interesting blog there to see how easy actually it is to implement it as well.
So it would be obviously very useful to roll this functionality maybe to some other problem areas of secret administration. Is there any information on that maybe?
Yes, indeed. So some from the information that we've received, councils are also interested in expanding this type of service to include issues such as antisocial behavior. So here we can really also start looking into new technology, so photo recognition for better categorization, also issues of noise, right, and other antisocial behavior that can be tracked in real time rather than simply only reporting issues in retrospect. So that's an interesting development, and maybe we'll see more of that.
Okay, thank you. So we are close to 3 p.m. Central Europe time. If there are no other questions, then I would suggest to the final slides. So, and first of all, I would like to thank the presenters, so Lea and Sebastiaan, and for you as participants to be with us today. And I would like to use the opportunity to invite you to the next event, to announce the event that will take place the next week. So in 1 week time, we'll organize the workshop on the data ecosystem for geospatial data. So that was one of the activities that was performed under the ELISE action. So it's already information about that in Join Up. So you're kindly invited to join to this workshop, and because it will be consisting of 3 parts of the presentation, panel, and the involvement of the participants as well. So in any case, follow us on our channels, as you can see on the last slide, on Twitter, on Join Up page, and the recordings and the presentations of all our webinars can be found as well on the ELISE. So thank you very much and have a nice afternoon, and see you soon in the next conference.